Well, hello, fiction lovers. That's right, I'm back. I know I swore that I wasn't going to do these anymore, but oh well. I'm going to tell you. All right, so I'm going to just give you a relatively short frolic through James Joyce's Araby. Um, and I wish we had more time to cover Joyce. What I'm going to recommend that you do is take Mr. Askew's Irish literature class. Because he is an expert in this, and you'll have an opportunity to study James Joyce in some greater depth. Okay, so Araby then is part of a collection of stories, collections called Dubliners, and basically what Dubliners does is it provides a look at in hyperrealism. What Joyce calls, as you see from your notes, the paralysis that beset the lives of people in then provincial Ireland. So there's still the tension there between the Irish and the English. What you should notice here is the precision of the language. There's a good deal of symbolism here. We don't typically talk about symbolism in our class, but I'll touch on a little bit of it as we go forward. Okay, so let's take a couple look at a couple things. So Araby then is the name. It is supposed to evoke in you a sense of romance, of mystery, and that stands in sharp counterpoint to the lives that the people in Ireland, especially in working class Ireland, are living. So so notice that your speaker, you've got an unnamed speaker. Okay, which is to suggest that that he could be anyone. And I will say that I bet if you have not read this story, I read the story when I was in high school, believe it or not, and so you should, in reading this, if you do a deep dive into the character, you'll see yourselves in it. The idea of really wanting something badly and fantasizing about it, only to be super disappointed. Maybe when we're all together, I'll tell you a funny story from when I was in middle school that is perfectly emblematic of this happening. So what I would ask you to take a look at in stories like this, if you look at the color imagery, what you're going to notice is that the color imagery is predominantly it's drab. So it's the dark colors, sort of the sense of the colorless, and the kind of colorless is supposed to contribute to the tone of the story, which is dolorous. And by that I mean it's something like hopeless, the repetition of things, as though there's no end in sight. Okay, so this first word here, blind, being it's a dead end, and in other words, there's no outlet. So maybe some of you live on a cove or something. It's the same sort of idea, but it's also should suggest lack of sight. Okay, lack of ability to see, and so this is going to. This is something like foreshadowing. Reflexively, we'll come back to this at the end of the story when we see what happens to the boy. So if you take just a quick look at a couple things, and I'm going to just kind of gloss here. The idea of the Christian Brothers School setting the boys free, and when you come up on language like that, then the implication is that so CBS is the tenor here, and then the vehicle is a prison. Okay, which means then that the boys, of course, are prisoners, and they're prisoners both of school and also, again, of the lives that they lead here. So I talked about the color imagery. So you've got a lot of browns and a lot of blacks and things of that nature. Notice something else relative to the houses. You've got a lot of personification that makes an appearance, especially the dwellings. So you've got this one house. So here is the business of the blind end, and it's repeated again here. And it gazes at the other. The houses gaze at one another with brown imperturbable faces. It means they don't change. So again suggests the just how sort of repetitive and dull their lives are. All right, so a couple things to make note of: the sense of the religious, the sense of the quest is front and center here. So I'm probably, by the way, I'm not going to accept notes on this. I'm just giving you a heads up in terms of like things that are probably going to appear on the quiz. So I'll probably ask you a question about who was the former tenant of the house. So the idea of this old priest dying in the back drawing room, and so look at all these images of stagnation. So we'll call it. I'll write it here. So images of stagnation. So you've got this business about the musty air, okay, and the fact that because it's been long enclosed, all right. So the sense of nothing is moving or changing here. So it hangs in all the rooms. You've got this this waste room that's littered with old, useless papers. Okay, so like I said, these things should, when taken together, are developing a sense of things. If you read carefully, you'll see the fact that the pages are then curled and damp. You've got this old novel by Sir Walter Scott about Mary, Queen of Scots. I mean, this is taking you all the way back to Queen. This is 300 years old. The story there, and then the devout communicant. It's this religious thing, and the memoirs of Vidocq. Then is kind of a detective thing. So the old man is reading an array of different things, but we're supposed to suggest that he's not reading anything recent, anything that is particularly interesting. Okay, so the idea of the leaves. Okay, he says, I like the last book, because it's leaves. So this is pages. And notice that they're yellow. So another color that is sort of devoid of life. And the business about the garden behind the house. That's got a central apple tree. Notice you've got the rusty bicycle pump, and which should jump out at you, because if you're talking about an old man, an old priest, that bicycle pump's got to be pretty rusty, because we think, when's the last time that an old priest would have ridden the bicycle? And if you've got the visual image of him in his his long robes or anything like that, trying to ride it, might have been relatively humorous or sad, I suppose, in a way. So the charitable priest that leaves all his money to institutions and the furniture of his house to his sister. This should evoke in you this sense of loneliness, and you should be getting that also with the speaker. Okay, let's see. So more the color images. We've got the violet. So this is a relatively, if you go through the color spectrum, Roy G. Biv, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So violet is the thing that is right near the darkest of the colors. The lamps of the street lifted their feeble lanterns. So you've got that personification there again, and the personification is adding that sense of immediacy. Like all these poor people are in this together. Lots of good imagery here. Not only do you have the sort of the olfactory sense of the sense in the house and whatnot, but you've got a good deal of tactility with the coldness. So coldness makes an appearance throughout until the end, when the eyes of the boy are burning in anguish. So once again, you've got the dark, muddy lanes. Okay. So go through and you can mark the rest of this on your own in terms of these color images and so forth. Okay, here's the olfactory images I was talking about. The dark, dripping gardens where odors arose from the ash pits. So ashes are this is the remains of things that are burned. So you should get this sense of and the odorous stables, right? So you've got what? You've got the manure. Okay, so it's all this business of things being used up and things being, waste products. They're cast off. So they're all contributing to this this tone that is going to weigh us down by the end. The career of our play. So career, this means something like trajectory. If you say that someone careered out of control, it's suggesting that that their direction is not where they meant it to go. Okay, let's see. So let's buzz down here to the business of the boy. So he's playing with his friends like little boys do, and out of nowhere appears his friend Mangan's sister. All right, and she. So notice that she is not given a name either. She's just Mangan's sister. So it'd be different if it were Johnny and Sally, right? But here the speaker's unnamed, and the object of his, I suppose, what you would call semi-unreasonable passion, but it's one that is just so common with young boys. Okay, so you think if he's just barely prepubescent, and it's getting to that point where he's able to fantasize, and he's fantasizing about the girl. So I'm probably going to ask you to unpack this, the heart leaping, the personification then of the heart. Notice once again we've got the brown figure. She's going to be described in that way quite a bit, which is odd because you would think that that he in his fantasies of her, and I don't even have a fantasy, I'm talking about like the imagination of him having a romantic relationship with her, of her liking him in a way that maybe loving him in the way that that he loves her, again in a way that only young boys can do. Let's see. So we've got the always in my eye. So we've got the hyperbole there. My eye then, of course, is what? Synecdoche. Okay. Let me point out one figure of repetition here, and the figures of repetition here is not for grace, but rather it's to suggest the monotony of what's happening with him. So morning after morning, this is called diacope. Diacope. So diacope is the repetition of a word with one or more between it, and usually it's to express deep feeling. Here, it's the deep feeling is of the sort of the hopeless monotony of what it is that he is doing. Okay, and just this is the greatest little nugget here, where he waits for her to come down to enter the street to go to school, and then he sprints downstairs with his lunch, right, and he trails behind her. And then just as she's about to turn off to her direction to school, he passes her, doesn't say anything, and does this every day. Every day. It's just so perfectly juvenile and beautiful and sad. Okay, so here's our really first indication of the sacredness of his quest. So this is the child's imagination. And that unbridled passion that is going to make this into a quest of religious importance. So you're going to see that these symbols that show up in a way that's not unlike what Eliot talks about with the objective correlative. These things will all build over the course of the short story, and they accumulate weight. Okay, so it's a weird concept, and we really haven't talked about it that much in class because we haven't had an opportunity to deal with anything that's particularly long, as realistic as Jane Austen was. But these symbols will start to gain weight over the course of the short story. Okay, let's see here. Then this is a marvelous image right here. My body was like a harp, and her words and gestures were like fingers running upon the wires. We talked about the fact that girls early 19th century were generally playing either the piano or the harp, because they were instruments that that allowed the woman's graceful figure to be displayed to its utmost advantage. And so the idea that she is playing upon him as though he were a harp is just suggests how powerless he is. He is being acted upon by his feelings. He really has relatively no control. Just point this out real quick. So her name sprang to my lips at moments in strange prayers and praises. So once again, this is the the motif. So motif, of course, is the repetition of images or symbols, objects, and things of that nature that are all in service of the overarching project of the piece that we're looking about. So combined with the motif, we'll call it the religious quest motif. Okay, the religious quest motif, and so let's see, as we make our way, past the business about him being played upon like a harp, when all his senses seem to desire to veil themselves, he says, oh love," many times, when he's pressing the palms of his hands together until they trembled, and he's murmuring this. So this is a nice example of epimony. All right, and the again, figures of repetition, they combine to for emphasis, and the fact that this boy is saying this in reference to this girl. Okay, here, just to make sure we're clear, confused there, like when we read in Jane Austen, this means embarrassed. Okay, when they have this, the first time they talk, right, and the entire thing, and how long does the exchange last? Okay, she asks if he's going to go to Araby. He's just beside himself. He forgot whether he answered yes or no, and so why can't she go? Because she's got a religious retreat. Of course, that's great irony, right? Yeah, here he is on the religious quest, and he is foiled by God here. So her convent, of course, is the her convent school. So he goes to Christian Brothers school, and so she's going to a girls Catholic school. Okay, so anyway, while the other boys are doing what boys do, which is fight and horseplay and this kind of thing, here he is like trying to chat her up, as though he's going to invite her down to the pub later or something. Okay, and so we don't even have the sense that he says that he's going to go. She just says, it's well for you that you don't have an obligation. And he says, if I go, I will bring you something. And, okay, so think about what's happening with the girl. If I go. I mean, he hasn't made a promise. He's like, hey, I'm going, for sure, bring you something. No. From this moment, okay, is when the fantasy really starts to leap forward. Notice that everything that's happening in this paragraph is how badly he's affected by by his daydream. Okay, this is without question hyperbole. I wish to annihilate the tedious intervening days. So the hyperbole speaks to his unrealistic enthusiasm. I'm going to use the word ardor. Okay, this passionate sense of things. Okay, so all through here, he's apparently a good student. Even though this is a marvelous technique of Joyce's. He doesn't say things directly. He allows some work to be done by the reader, which is so great. Okay, so I answered a few questions in class. I watched my master's face pass from amiability to sternness. He hoped I was not beginning to idle. We get the sense that most other boys are doing this. He was like teacher's pet, and now he's turning into just like everybody else. Okay? So here we have child's play. Everything in his life that formerly was able to gain his attention was child's play. Ugly, monotonous child's play. So this is another example of diagonal. This is, oh dear. Sorry. This here is elaborative diacope. Okay, meaning that that's where there's intervening matter, but the elaboration is ugly, monotonous. So it makes explicit what kind of child's play we're talking about, and again, that's also relatively hyperbolic. Okay, so let's see. Tell you what, I'm gonna push you through here, and I'm gonna say what I need you to take a look at is, as you go through here, look at the imagery. Okay, remember I talked to you about the fact that coldness is going to make an appearance. The air was pitilessly raw, and already my heart misgave me. You've got a lot of the dark color imagery here. More hyperbole. I had to endure the gossip of the tea table. So it's the old ladies that are sitting there talking, as people do. Let's see. Okay, and this is sort of the last thing that I'm going to give you before I sign off. I made the mention that that a lot of what Joyce does is allows you to interpret the same thing that the speaker's interpreting. When the uncle shows up so late because he's been at the pub, okay? And so what he interprets these signs as the uncle is drunk. And the irony of this is that he has been relying all this time, I mean, since up at the top of the page, where he's reminded his uncle, and he says, "Yes, boy, I know." Okay? He's having to rely on an unreliable man. And we know that one of the notes tells you that this is common in the stories of Joyce and his characters. There's not a mother and father. Quite often the central figure lives with a grandmother or an uncle and aunt, something of that nature, to suggest that sort of displaced feeling. Okay? All right. That's all I got, because that's 22 minutes, and I really didn't want to go much longer than 20. So I want you to pay attention as you go down toward the end of the story. Look at how the tension builds, how the tension builds, how the tension builds, and then where it's released with his moment of epiphany. This is one of the things that Joyce works toward, is that the characters have this flash. Okay, an epiphany generally is a word that is used to describe a religious enlightenment, and so the strength of what happens to him at the end is like a religious experience, which is of course perfectly apt, given the fact that he had in his mind turned this thing into a religious quest. Okay, so see you in the quiz tomorrow.